Good morning, good life. You're listening to Detail Therapy, episode 66, featuring best-selling author James Clear.
She's an award-winning YouTuber and best-selling author obsessed with helping you go after the life you want.
I like it.
Join her as she seeks out the stories and strategies.
Give me every little detail.
Of extraordinary people who found success.
I'm going to get emotional. Oh my God.
Welcome to Detail Therapy with Amy Landino.
Everybody wants results, but you could probably say your results in any particular domain are a lagging measure of your habits. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your learning and reading habits. Your bank account is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your physical fitness is a lagging measure of your training and eating habits. Even the amount of clutter in your bedroom or on your desk is a lagging measure of your cleaning habits. In pretty much any domain in life, the results that you get are a natural consequence of the habits that preceded them.
That was a little sampling of my conversation with our guest today, James Clear. In this episode, we will be discussing the details about habits. What does the word habit even actually mean? We dive into James's 4 steps for building the most productive habits into your routine. Creating A+ work. What's the difference between something that's A+ and something that's A-? James is going to share his thoughts on producing your best work at all times, no matter what or where it is, and keeping it simple. When you're building habits, there are so many things that try to creep in and distract you from what you want. We're going to talk about the ways that you can stick with your goals by creating the right path for you. Before we get into it, for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Amy Landino, and I will be your host. You can think of me as your #1 productive lifestyle coach. I'm the director and founder of Gatlu House, a media company dedicated to helping you go after the life you want. In addition to this podcast, we produce the award-winning series AMYTV. Psst. I'm the host of that too. I've also authored 2 best-selling books, including Good Morning, Good Life, which is now available on Amazon. Links to everything I mentioned will be in the show notes at detailspodcast.com. I know there's a lot of you listening who are always working on your habits. It's what you and I have in common, so that makes this episode a really special one. Recorded this a while ago with James, and so excited that it is finally coming out. So I do not want to waste a lot of time. We really got into it. No, by the way, totally need to tell you about Shine Squad, especially today, because the secret podcast we did with James was so much fun also. So listen, if you haven't heard of Shine Squad yet, it is my exclusive habit and morning routines club on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/AMYTV. I do a 3 to 5 minute podcast every weekday for the Shine Squadron, as well as throw in some secret podcasts from our guests of Detail Therapy. We do live Q&As, and we also have trainings and all kinds of fun stuff. The community is incredible. But yeah, if you're interested to hear more from James today, you're going to want to hear that secret podcast. You got to join Shine Squad. Every tier of Shine Squad can hear the secret podcast. So go and check that out. Make sure that you do. And if you really need to surround yourself with more people who are going to motivate you to be the best version of yourself, go after the life you want, and make those habits stick, that's where you want to be. Links will always be in the show notes for you to check out. But if you just pop on over to patreon.com/AMYTV, then you will find your way. patreon.com/AMYTV. Cannot waste any more time on this. This is such a valuable episode. I was really excited when James said that he could pop on over down the street, because he's also from Columbus, to be on the show after we actually talked about his book, Atomic Habits, on AMYTV. Just a really fabulous read, and you're about to find out why you must get this book in your brain ASAP, no matter how you consume it, whether you're a reader or an audibler, whatever it is for you, you're just going to love it. And as soon as you meet James today, I know you're going to snag your copy. So let's do it. Our guest today is James Clear, a personal development keynote speaker and New York Times bestselling author of Atomic Habits. He teaches audiences about habit building, decision-making, and self-improvement. As a regular speaker at Fortune 500 companies, his work has been used by teams in the NFL, NBA, and MLB. Through his online course, The Habits Academy, Clear has taught more than 10,000 leaders, managers, coaches, and teachers how to improve. Let's get into it with James Clear. James Clear, welcome to the show.
Hi, good to talk to you. Thank you for having me.
Why do you do what you do?
I think I don't really want things that are different than what most people want. I want to do work that matters. I want to do work that makes an impact. I could probably summarize my business strategy or approach as just saying, create things that people love in formats that scale. So things people love, in my case, that is writing that's useful, applicable, practical. Obviously, Atomic Habits is focused on like how to make habits useful in your daily life and work. But then the formats that scale part is another part of like why I do what I do. Why do you do it in, on a blog rather than writing a newspaper column? Or why do you write a book rather than creating some other, format? And so I like to do things that can spread widely. So
I want to ask you about that because writing, I feel like it's no secret you're an excellent writer, but also like when it comes to where your presence really is, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's certainly where you are as an author, but as a blogger, I think like you're holding it down for the blog world right now. When I think of some people who are like, they're blogging and they really are focused on my main thing is to grab attention and hopefully they'll come to, jamesclear.com. Like you're doing an excellent job of that. Has there ever been a point where you're like, okay, maybe we need to diversify like a lot, or have you really stayed focused there?
Yeah, there is a challenge there, right? Like the more you spread yourself thin, the harder it is to do things well. I think I'll kind of circle back to answer this, but generally speaking, I think the internet is a little different now than it was when I started.
Which was when?
November 12th, 2012 was the first post that I put on jamesclear.com. So it's been 6 or 7 years now. And then I think it was a little more like hub and spoke was a thing you could do where you would like write an article on your site and then you could repurpose it on, different platforms, turn it into a podcast, like by reading the transcript or whatever. Like you could utilize that and kind of spread it around and it would do okay. Now I feel like the web is more platform centric in the sense that you have people who are like YouTube people and Instagram people, but they don't really listen to podcasts. And then you've got somebody else who's like really into podcasts and Twitter, but they don't really use Facebook and Instagram.
Right.
And people kind of like choose their areas where they live. And the consequence of each of those platforms maturing is that you really need to be great to stand out on each platform. If you want to have like all the returns, any of these media platforms, it's a power law game. So all of the returns are to the top 1% or the top 0.1% of creators. And so if you want to do really well as a podcast, you need to be in the top 1% or 5% of podcasts. If you want to do really well as a YouTuber, you need to be in the top 1% or 0.1% of YouTubers. And so for that reason, I think you need to pick a little bit more now rather than spreading it around. Also, you just mentioned like holding it down for bloggers or things like that. I don't really think blogging is as much of it's not sexy or popular in the way that it used to be. Now it's much more like you want to start a podcast or YouTube or be an Instagram influencer. I don't think that the people who are coming up now, it's not where they're starting. And I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I just wonder if it's like, this always happens though. Like podcasting was hot and then it was like, it was still hot, but then the conversation changed.
Right.
And it's like, oh no, it's YouTube again. And then there's always been so many seasons where it's like, are you worried because all these other video competitors are popping up or podcasting? Like, do you really need to be on YouTube?
Yeah.
And now I guess people are saying again, YouTube's hot. So I wonder if it's like, we're just not paying as much attention to blogging right now as maybe it'll change again. I mean, I think we can just anticipate that.
Well, writing, I think if we view it a little step larger, is always going to exist. And
Totally.
what format that is in or what shape it takes might change as far as like what is the popular mode of the moment. But that'll certainly always be around. I think regardless of where my content is, and certainly, the email list is the number one thing for me. That's like what I try to drive everybody back to and the kind of the core. That's what I consider to be my audience or my subscribers. No matter where I'm producing something though, I want it to be A+ work. And Tim Urban and I have talked about this, the difference. I thought Tim made some good points about like the difference between A- work and A+ work. And again, power law game. So the difference between like an A- or a B+ is kind of like, oh, it's pretty good. But actually doing A+ work and taking the time to get that right delivers significantly better results. So Atomic Habits took me, depending on how you measure it, 3 to 5 years to write. And at the time I was like, I don't want to oversell it, but it was like kind of dark and like, I felt like I was in this cave and struggling to get it done. And now I look back and I'm like very glad that I took the time to do it right. But you can take that same concept and scale it down. Like whenever I send out a tweet, it should be an A+ idea. Whenever I write a blog post, that should be A+ as well. And then you scale it up to something much larger, like writing a book, and that should have the same quality bar.
Yeah. And I think that just goes back to your original point. Like you wouldn't be on Twitter if that was not a 140 to 200 character really solid extension of who you are as a writer, both on the blog and on the email list. So I feel like that still ties in really well to your brand, where Twitter might not necessarily be the key thing someone needs to be worried about if they're trying to do A-level work at all on any platform.
Yeah. Well, where you focus, I think for sure changes on like where you're at on your timeline. But you're right. It comes back to, I think, both of those things. Create things people love at formats that scale. And you need both. Like it's got to be really useful, really valuable, in my case, highly practical and applicable. And it has the option to go viral or spread or, move around the web.
Totally. Okay, that was my selfish moment. I definitely love talking to other creators about why they create and where they create and how they stay consistent. So we can talk about more of that another day. But I do want to talk about Atomic Habits because we read this book over the summer for AMYTV Book Club. And so it was very exciting to be able to get some time from you. I'm so excited you're back in Columbus here.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
And I just to kind of give people some backstory, you said this took you 3 to 5 years to write. I don't know if that was the beginning of this, but you talk about habits and human potential. Like that's what you discuss. How did you initially get interested in that?
I came at it sort of in two different ways. The first was like a more personal avenue. So I played sports all the way growing up. I tell the story as I kick off the book about this injury that I suffered where I got hit in the face with a baseball bat and kind of needed to build small habits to bounce back from that. And so that was like a very personal experience through which I realized, doing small things each day is the only way that I can recover from this injury and the only way I can make progress and kind of work my way back. And so that was like a much more of a practitioner lens. And then the second lens that I had for it was more like academic or professional. I studied science in undergrad, mostly hard sciences, physical sciences, chemistry, physics, biology. And then when I got done, I went to graduate school and I decided to start my own company. And the first 2 years, I basically just like flopped around and tried ideas, but didn't really make much progress. And I now refer to that period as the time when I incubated my skill set. But as I was learning things, I started to ask myself, like, why aren't things going well? And I realized it was because I didn't know how to market stuff. I didn't know, like, why would somebody sign up to an email list? Why would somebody buy a product? And so I started reading about consumer psychology just to learn some business stuff. And that naturally led me and sort of uncovered some of the behavioral psychology, habit formation ideas. Like I just started kind of like bleeding into that area as I read more. And I started to connect the dots between the two. So I had this personal experience as an athlete where I built a bunch of habits. And then I had this more professional experience where I was investigating and reading about psychology to build the business. And eventually I started thinking, some of these ideas I'm reading about, they could apply to building a better habit in the gym or eating habits or writing habits or whatever it is. And so I started keeping notes on that. And then eventually, after a year or two of that, it became jamesclear.com and ultimately the book.
I don't know how I never connected that about your story, because I feel like I have something almost similar in that my personal brand, certainly what I talk about on YouTube, pivoted super hard in 2018 to a lot of people. People who aren't my audience thought I pivoted super hard. People that are my audience were very excited about it because I started to realize the more I was reaching sort of the end of my rope about being excited about talking about video on video, like it was like, well, if there's more to talk about in this arena, which was very sort of a B2B space at the time, why are these people still not doing it? You know what I mean? So, because it was still a continuation of the conversation of like, but this is a problem and this is a problem. And everybody thinks their problems are special. And it's really funny how things overlap and they're really the same question being asked in different costumes. So that's how my presence sort of changed into this passion about how do you get things done? Because it doesn't matter if you want to vlog like a boss or you just want to do something else that you're passionate about outside of your full-time job or whatever. it comes down to how you develop that habit. So it sort of took this big pivot also from the research of where is this really going from a business aspect. Oh, I think, business and consumer behavior both point back to like, well, how are you doing this? How are you motivated to do this? How do you find the true definition of a habit in your life? Because I also think that the word habit has been just thrown around so much that people don't even know what it means. Yeah. It's like a habit is actually a habit because it's a habit. Like, do you even know what that means anymore? But yeah, it's so funny because it kind of pivoted from a business side of things for me too.
Well, I think you're bringing up a good point, which is ultimately, whether we're talking about personal life or professional life, the work that you do or other things in your life, it comes down to taking action. It comes down to, like, can you do something to move the needle? And then perhaps even more importantly, can you show up each day and do it in a reliable way? And that's one of the reasons why I felt so good about spending such an obscene amount of time on one topic, is that habits are one of those things. There maybe aren't that many topics, maybe a dozen in life that probably warrant that amount of time and inspection because they touch at pretty much every area of our lives. So, I think you could probably say everybody wants results, but you could probably say your results in any particular domain are a lagging measure of your habits. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your learning and reading habits. Your bank account is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your physical fitness is a lagging measure of your training and eating habits. Even the amount of clutter in your bedroom or on your desk is a lagging measure of your cleaning habits. In pretty much any domain in life, the results that you get are a natural consequence of the habits that preceded them. Mm-hmm. And so by understanding how your habits work and how to change them, you can put yourself in a much better position to deliver the results that we think we so badly want.
Okay, so I wanted to get into some questions. I went to Instagram because I know how excited my audience was that we were sitting down today. But before we kind of dig into some examples, can you just walk through those 4 simple steps for building better habits you talk about in Atomic Habits for anyone that hasn't checked it out yet?
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, if you want to build a habit, you kind of want 4 different things to happen. And you don't need all 4 to happen all the time, but the more of these that you have going for you, the easier it will be to build a habit. So the first thing that you want is you want your habits to be obvious. The more obvious and available, visible, easy to see a habit is, or the cue that sparks the habit, the more likely it is you're going to take action on it. The second thing that you want is you want your habits to be attractive. The more attractive and appealing a habit is, the more you're going to feel motivated to do it consistently. The third thing is you want your habits to be easy. If a habit is easy, simple, convenient, has very low friction, then it's much more likely that you're going to perform it. And then the fourth and final thing that you want is you want your habits to be satisfying. The more satisfying and enjoyable they are, the more rewarding that habit feels, the more likely you are to have this positive signal in your brain that says, hey, I should repeat this again next time. And so those 4, which I would summarize as what I call the 4 laws of behavior change: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. That gives you sort of a high level framework for how to get a good habit to stick. Now, if you want to break a bad habit, then you just invert those 4. So rather than making it obvious, make it invisible, hide it, make it less likely that you come across it. Rather than making it attractive, make it unattractive. Rather than making it easy, make it difficult, increase friction, add steps, put more space between you and the behavior. And then finally, rather than making it satisfying, you want to make it unsatisfying, add a cost, have an immediate consequence to the behavior. And again, the book goes into, many, many details of how to do that, and we can talk about it as well. But that's the high level view. You want to build a good habit, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. You want to break a bad one, make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, make it unsatisfying.
So then once you've figured out what that looks like for you, how do you start proceeding through the process of actually doing it? Because this is where I think the breakdown of the word habit is a problem. It's okay, I want to have good habits. Okay, that's cool. But maybe we need to make it not plural yet, because a habit is actually something you're going to do consistently. A habit is something you're going to do consistently. I think that's the thing people miss the mark on is, I'm going to try Amy's habits. What is it? What does that even mean? You want to try the things I also do in the morning and try to make them habitual? I think that's the step that people are missing is there are steps to take to make something a habit in your own life.
So you are bringing up a couple interesting points. Let me kind of have a few different points of entry. So first is this habit versus habits, singular versus plural. So a lot of people ask that question: how many habits should I build? I get really excited. I'm motivated to make a change. How many of these can I do at once? And my general recommendation is to keep it simple and just focus on one thing at a time. Some people will tell you can build 2 or 3, but that's if the habits are incredibly small, like doing 1 push-up and meditating for 1 minute and writing 1 sentence or something like that. But generally, you got to focus on one. And another reason why this is true is that people often think they're keeping it simple, but there's much more to it than that. So for example, you might say, okay, I know that I should keep it simple and I'm just going to focus on one habit. So I'm just going to focus on the habit of eating better, which is great, but there actually are a bunch of sub-tasks or sub-habits associated with that. If you're not eating many meals at home, then maybe you need to build better grocery shopping habits, and then you need to build better meal planning habits, and then also meal prep and like cutting up and chopping vegetables. Maybe there's new knife skills you need to learn.
This is literally the habit I have the hardest time with because there are so many steps. Like when I think eating better, I'm thinking this takes so much time.
Yes,
it does. Instacart is helping a lot because I don't shop the wrong areas of the store. I keep my list focused and somebody brings it to me, but that's as far as it's gotten.
So that actually is a good example, though, of some of the principles that we just talked about. This idea, for example, of making it easy and reducing friction. So the habit of eating healthy, well, grocery shopping and buying things that you don't need and getting those in the house, that all adds additional time, additional friction. And so if you have the money to outsource that part and automate it, well, then we've made that whole chain of behavior easier. So anyway, so that's the kind of the first point, is that let's try to stay focused and just pick one thing. The next point is what you mentioned about like the word habit kind of having too many meanings. And so the technical definition of a habit is a behavior that's been repeated enough times to be more or less automatic. So brushing your teeth, tying your shoes, unplugging the toaster after each use, things that are very simple and quick. Most of them are, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, maybe at the most, but like your brain is pretty much on autopilot. But we use the word habit to mean other things than that. You might say, I want to get in the habit of writing every day, or I want to get in the habit of going to the gym consistently. And I know what you mean when you say that. You mean I want to make it a regular practice, a routine. But going to the gym or writing, for example, writing is about as effortful as it gets in the sense that you're thinking very carefully about, do I cut this word or not? Should I rearrange these sentences? Should this
It's a very mindful practice.
Correct.
For sure.
So if habits are mindless and automatic and writing is mindful and concentrated and effort, requires effort, how do we rectify those two things? How do we manage that misalignment? And so this, I think, answers the actual question you asked, which is where do we start? Where do we begin? And the answer is, a lot of the things that move the needle do require concentration and effort and mindful practice. And so making sales calls or writing or whatever it is, the knowledge work that we do does require careful thought. And so the answer is not to make the entire routine a habit. The answer is to make the first action a habit. Habits are the entry point, not the end point. And so if you can automate that first behavior, if you can knock down the lead domino, then you can sort of determine the next chunk of time. And the best way that I know to do that, the best method that I have, is what I call the 2-minute rule, where you take whatever habit you're trying to build and you scale it down to something that takes 2 minutes or less to do. You scale it down to the first 2 minutes. So read 40 books a year becomes read 1 page, or do yoga 4 days a week becomes take out my yoga mat. And sometimes when I say that, people resist it a little bit because they think, okay, I know what you're saying, but like my real goal is to do the workout. I know I don't just want to take my yoga mat out. So if this is some kind of like mental trick, why would I fall for it, basically? And I understand if you feel that way, but so in the book, I tell a story of this guy named Mitch, who ended up losing over 100 pounds. And when he went to the gym, he wasn't allowed to stay. For the first 6 weeks, he wasn't allowed to stay for longer than 5 minutes. So he had this little rule for himself. So he'd get in the car, drive to the gym, get out, do half an exercise, get back in the car, drive home. And it sounds ridiculous, right? It sounds silly. It's like, this is not going to get the guy the results he wants. But what you realize is that he was mastering the art of showing up. He was becoming the type of person that went to the gym 4 days a week, even if it was only for 5 minutes. And that, I think, is a much deeper truth about habits that people often overlook, which is a habit must be established before it can be improved. It has to be the normal, the standard in your life before you can expand or optimize it. And so often we're focused on finding the perfect business idea, the best workout program, the ideal diet plan. We're so focused on optimizing that we don't give ourselves permission to show up, even if it's just in a small way. So the answer to your question is, I think, use the 2-minute rule, scale it down, master the art of showing up. And then once you do that, you have some raw material that you can sort of work with and expand from there.
I love that. I'm going to give some real world advice right now because my book that's coming out is called Good Morning, Good Life. And there's this big misconception. The reason I wanted to write it was I think you need to start your day on your terms. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and have this whole ritual. I happen to have one. Who cares? That's my life. It's not yours. But something that I talk about is if you're going to wake up earlier, if that is your goal, if you know that the only space of time during the day that you could achieve to have as your own is before the rest of the world wakes up, then okay, work toward that. So literally use the 2-minute rule. Instead of, okay, I wake up at 7, but I have to leave by 7:30. If that's your bad habit right now, then just try 6:58 tomorrow, because it's like I think this is why people say, just promise yourself you'll do something for 15 minutes and then give up if it's 15 minutes doesn't work out. I like this so much better. Yeah. It's like, after 2 minutes if it's not going to work out anyway, but the art of showing up just a little bit earlier, maybe you don't even change the time for a couple more days. It's just 6:58 and it just becomes more of a habit of you can't hit the snooze anymore, but this time it's for you.
There is some truth to the fact that like most of the friction is at the beginning of a task. There's this moment, a lot of these choices are kind of like a fork in the road. So like my wife comes home, it's like 5:15 and either we change into our workout clothes and go to the gym and work out, or we sit on the couch and watch reruns of The Office and eat Indian food. And like both of those are great nights, but they're very different. And it's really changing into the workout clothes that determines the whole thing. If we do that, the next 2 hours are like decided. It's over. We'll go to the gym. Like it's already done. And so I think it's worth asking yourself, if I have these things I say are important to me, these habits or routines, these rituals that I want to build, if I walk back in time, what is the decisive moment? What is that fork in the road that determines whether that happens or not, or that initiates the behavior? And so rather than worrying about the whole thing that happens after, don't worry about the workout, don't worry about the writing, any of the other major stuff, the whole chunk of time, you just let it go and just focus on that fork in the road, that initial decision. Then you can kind of organize your life around, well, the thing we really need to do is to make sure we change into our workout clothes. And that is way more doable than the rest of it. And you can kind of trust a lot of good things are going to happen, even if you give yourself permission to not do the workout, to just change into the clothes.
I wear workout clothes all the time and have no intention of working out, to be fair.
But that idea, that principle applied broadly, I think can be very useful.
Yes, I agree. Especially when there's somebody else involved. I know that works better with my husband too. When it's like, okay, well, today we decided we were going to go on a bike ride. So if somebody's starting to put bike riding clothes on, at least you have two people. There's a hot chance that it's more likely to happen in together. I mean, like that's great, especially for people who do need more external accountability. That's a good piece of advice. In addition to just do the 2-minute or less task to start moving into the direction. Yep. I love the Mitch example of going to the gym for 5 minutes.
Yeah, it sounds silly, but it
makes so much sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to it. We don't allow ourselves to show up consistently.
Especially the whole mind boggle of a commute to the gym. That's something that I struggle with a lot. Like when I have time to commute to a gym, I have one built into my building. So that's like why I'm like, I always have options. But yeah, you can really start talking yourself out of it if it's like you got to get dressed and get in the car and drive in the dark and get there and wake up and et cetera.
There are quite a few studies that show that you're more likely to stick to a workout habit if your gym is on the path of your normal commute, even if it's just a block or two out of the way from on the way to the office. Now you're going out of your way to get there. And so that again, this comes back to make it easy. Making the path as convenient as possible, having as little friction as possible increases the odds.
Yeah, because what's the opposite of that? Driving by the gym every day, reminding yourself that you don't go to the gym, right?
Right. Feelings of guilt and shame.
There you go. Okay. Jasmine, spelled differently, asked, how do you know whether a habit is worth sticking to?
That's an interesting question. So I think we can probably attack this from a couple different levels. So let's start high level. So think about big picture about your life. Many ambitious people, and I would consider myself to be one, want to do a lot of things. And one of the challenges of that is that you're forced to make trade-offs in life. You only have a certain amount of time and you can't do everything at once. And most people we all know that implicitly, but still don't like it, don't like the fact that we have to choose. And so one way I've thought about this that has helped me manage that trade-off is to think about life as a series of seasons. So the question that I try to ask myself consistently is, what season am I in right now? And so as an example, I don't have kids yet. And so I'm in a very career-heavy season, right? I'm focused on the work I'm doing. I'm focused on my personal health, maybe focused a little less on family and friends and some of the other areas that are also important. And then at some point, presumably I'll have kids and that'll signal a shift in seasons. And maybe the family burner needs to get cranked up at that point. Maybe the career burner needs to get cranked down. And the point that I'm getting to is when the seasons in your life shift, the habits should probably shift with them. And so whether it's important to stick with something or not is the answer to the question, what season am I in right now? And are my habits serving the current season that I'm in?
I love that explanation because you're further driving the point of stop going against the grain of who you are. And your circumstances or what's happening around you or what's becoming your daily life is probably an indication of that.
For sure. So that's the big picture view is like, are my habits serving my current season? Then within that, you have a variety of habits that perhaps could be serving where you're at, but you're still questioning, is this the most effective path or not? And for that, I think we need to get a little more granular, and it's mostly about feedback. And we could also rephrase that probably in a more useful way and call it signals of progress. If you have signals of progress, then it's probably worthwhile and you can stick with it. If you have no signals of progress, then you need to either find a new form of measurement that can give you some progress so that you have a reason to stick with it, or try an alternative method that allows for better progress. So as an example, let's take working out. If you just use the number on the scale as your feedback mechanism, it probably is too delayed for you to get the signals of progress that you want to feel motivated to stick with it. Because the scale is probably not going to change except for maybe over a 2 or 3 week period. And even then it's probably going to be moderately slow. And you need to be working out that whole time. And so this is why something like a habit tracker can be so useful, because then, like my dad, for example, he likes to swim. So whenever he goes to the pool and does a workout, his body looks basically the same when he gets out, right? There's no visible change from that workout. And many good habits are like that. The change of getting 1% better or 1% worse on any given day is basically invisible, pretty much insignificant. But over 2 or 5 or 10 years, well, now it's actually quite significant. And so the challenge is that you can't see that signal of progress at the same frequency at which you need to practice the habit. And so habit tracking can help get over that. So every time he goes to the pool, his body looks the same, but he gets out and he has a little calendar and he puts an X on that day. And then at the end of the month, he counts up how many X's he has. And he has a little visual cue, a signal of progress of how many workouts he's done and how that compares to the month before. And so you want some form of measurement that gives you feedback at a motivating pace. Yeah. If the feedback is too slow, then motivation sags.
Yeah, I think just being able to say you completed a task, you have to be able to say you did it and just know that it's going to compound over a period of time. There are definitely people I think that are better served by keep the chain going, right? I don't think that I'm a finisher. So I definitely feel like I'm kind of one of those people, but it's also super intimidating to be like, okay, wait, do I have to swim every day? Right. I don't know if I can do that. You know?
The first answer is no, you don't have to do it every day, right? You can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever. You pick your pace and you want to build those chains up. But it is true that at some point, every chain breaks. And it's very motivating to have a long chain of habits, to have a good streak going, but it's also very demotivating for the chain to break. And so I think you need to pair that philosophy of never miss twice with the habit streak. So in other words, if the chain breaks, well, I wish that hadn't happened, but never miss twice. So let me make sure the next day is a healthy one. Let me make sure the next time, the next instance, I put all my energy into performing that habit. And if you can combine those two of like build up the streak, don't break the chain, and never miss twice, then you can kind of like have a good long-term consistency. Oh, yeah.
And then it just looks like art because you just have these periodic blanks on the calendar and that's okay.
I think we all know this, but like it's never the first mistake that ruins you. It's like the spiral of repeated mistakes that follows, right? It's like letting a slip up become a new habit that's actually the real problem. And so if you can embrace that philosophy of never miss twice, then, you get to the end of the year and those little gaps are just a blip on the radar.
And this might be arguable, maybe, I don't know if this is controversial, but like something like running every single day and not breaking that chain could potentially not be good for you. Like your body probably is not going to do well with that over a long term. I mean, I've heard of people whose doctor was like, you need to stop running so much. Like it's great, but and then, you next time you see them, something broke and it's like real bad. And then that chain's broken for a long time. So I think there's something to say with like taking a break is awesome. And also totally test whether something's really a habit or not, because instead of beating yourself up about it, knowing it's truly habitual for you means you'll get back.
Yeah. I think there's something there about the intensity, like
Yeah, a whole nother spiral.
I can tweet every day and the intensity is low and it's fine.
Yes.
If I tried to write a book every day, or if I tried to write 10,000 words every day, that's way too intense and it would like break me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Really fun question from Bateman and Root. She said, what's a habit that you've had trouble forming?
All kinds. I consider my readers and I are like peers in the sense that we're going through it together. We're all just trying to figure out how it works. And really the only difference is that when I come across an idea, I write it down and email it out. But otherwise, like I deal with all the same things and challenges that everybody else deals with. So one that I really struggled with while I was writing the book is, I guess for lack of a better term, like a power down routine. So it would get to be like, say, 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I would have this second wind. And I'd think, well, I'll just answer email for a little bit, or like I'll work on that chapter for a little bit. And then all of a sudden I turn around, it's like 1 or 2 a.m. And I have this rule where I don't.
What time do you start writing in that situation during the day? Like, what time did you actually sit down to start?
So if I wake up normally, I'll probably start writing at like 9 a.m.
Okay.
But if I end up in the situation that I'm describing here, where I worked late and then all of a sudden it's like, 1 or 2, well, I have this cardinal rule where I don't cheat myself on sleep. So if I go to bed late, I'm still going to get 8 hours. And well, that means I'm not waking up till 9 or 10. And so if that happens, well, then everything else gets pushed back and so on. So you can see the negative ripple.
It's a good cardinal rule. I approve.
Yeah. And I still feel good about that. I still would rather get enough sleep than wake up at some arbitrary time each day. And I think that the work is better because of that, because I'm well rested, but it is a challenge and one that I've battled at a variety of times.
There's always more things that you can do.
Yeah, for sure.
A power down routine. I like that. That's definitely something to think about.
One thing that's kind of interesting about that is you can apply this logic to any habit, which is if you walk back the kind of the behavioral chain where it's like, okay, what's the problem? Problem is I'm going to bed at 1 a.m. Okay, why am I going to bed at 1 a.m.? Well, because I was answering emails late. Okay, why am I answering emails late? Well, because I have trouble shutting down at the end of work. And so then you realize I thought the problem was that I go to bed late, but actually the problem is I need to learn how to shut email off at say 6 and not touch it anymore the rest of the night. And so it gives you a different place to intervene to solve the problem. And so I think that exercise can be useful for pretty much any habit to determine where is the actual bottleneck.
Right. Keep questioning it. Just keep questioning yourself and figure out what the root of the real issue is.
Yes.
And you don't have to keep beating yourself up over the thing that isn't actually the problem. It's certainly not a good byproduct of the problem, but find the problem.
Right.
Love that. Okay. I'd love to hear some more just about what your daily life is like. What's a typical morning routine for you?
So my routine is pretty simple. I wake up, I take a shower, I get a glass of water, and then I start writing. So I usually don't eat a meal until lunch. So in the morning, I'm kind of like, I get the block of maybe 3 or 4 hours where I can just focus on doing work. Pretty typically, I will leave, not 100% of the time, but most of the time, I'll leave my phone in another room while I'm working. And then I only bring my phone in after lunch. And so again, that gives me like an hour or so, or a couple hours in the morning where I can be focused, not distracted, responding to my own agenda rather than other people's. I tend to be kind of a weirdo in the sense that I work in like a very quiet environment. I don't usually listen to music when I'm reading and writing. I do listen to music when I work out. So I like it for that, but just not for the writing and reading habits. And then I do that in the morning, and then I have lunch. And then after that in the afternoon is usually when I do interviews or email or like all the other stuff that has to get done for the business.
And you and your wife typically work out in the evening is what I heard you say.
Right. So she gets home, we work out together. She gets home at like 5:30, and then we'll work out after that. And then we have dinner. And then usually in the evening, either we watch something or I'll read or whatever.
Yeah, I'm so with that because I hate working on the morning. Like, I know it's like the typical thing, like do it. And I still, especially right now, I'm finding I have to do a lot more working out in the morning, but it was like a mid-morning afternoon thing that I liked to break up the day.
Yeah, I've tried it at various times. I did have a period where I woke up and worked out like 6 or 7 a.m. I've done it mid-morning, like 11 or so. I find that my best workouts are usually like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Now I'm kind of like more on the 5 or 6 kind of side, but it just, again, I think it comes back to that question I mentioned earlier. What season are you in?
Yeah.
And,
yeah,
the
totally.
shape of the habit has to shift based on what season you're in and what else is going on in your life.
Yeah. I'm so game for like a 3 or 4 o'clock workout. I know once I get past 5:30, I'm going to mess with my sleep pattern too much. So I think that's part of it. You have to know what your like come down is going to be. But it's kind of great for the afternoon slump if you can do it in the afternoon.
That actually pairs pretty well. I have an article on my site about sleep, and there's a graph on there that shows the circadian rhythm and what actions are we tend to be in peak zones for throughout the day. And most people find what you're mentioning, which is around 2 to 4 p.m. is usually when they feel best for physical stuff.
If only the American way would just let us work out at 2 to 4. Well, that's not going to work for your employer, I'm sure. But what is your go-to type of workout?
So I do all weight training. I probably should do more cardio than I do. Occasionally I will like ride a stationary bike or row or finish the workout with something like that. But yeah, it's mostly squat, bench, deadlift, and then occasionally like supplementary exercises or maybe clean and jerk and snatch every now and then.
Makes sense. I'm like, that sounds about what I would have guessed. Okay. So, I mean, like, look James up. You'll be able to know what I'm saying. So what would you consider to be self-care other than working out? Is there anything that you do on a typical basis?
That's an interesting question. It can take a lot of different forms, I think. Maybe we could summarize it by saying self-care is not being rushed. And so you can be doing pretty much anything in a like caring way, provided you're not rushed and stressed by it, provided that it's not like, weighing on you heavily. So, reading and writing for me can be a great form of self-care if it's casual and not rushed. It can also be like highly stress inducing, like it felt like when I was working on the book and the deadline was approaching.
Yeah.
So I think it can be a lot of different things, and it can take various forms, but I think not being rushed is probably a central part of it. For me personally, getting outside is also a really big aspect. The more that I take a walk outside, or even just, I have this new kind of routine that I've been doing the last couple of months where it's like mid-morning and I'll leave my phone inside and then I'll walk out to my backyard and just like sit in the sun for 10 or 15 minutes. And it's like I can escape the fire hose of information that's on the internet for a little while. And it's quiet. No, everybody's at work. Nobody's doing anything. I don't know. It's just nice to like have a little peace of mind for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So usually some form of nature, getting outside is kind of central for me as well.
Do you feel like you're one of those people that like needs the sun to sort of like open up all the way?
I'm totally a sun worshiper. Okay. I would be like if in a different life, I was like a surf bum. In a life where I was born on the coast and not in Ohio, I would just be like on the beach and hanging out.
Aw.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. We have seasons here, but oh well. Okay. So what do you do to stay organized? Is there specifically maybe like whether it's like Google Calendar or whatever, just any tools that guide you through the day and keep you organized?
Yeah, so I use Fantastical, linked to Google Calendar for all scheduling and stuff. Pretty much the whole G Suite for like running the business, Gmail, Google Drive, all that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then for organizing ideas, I use Evernote for keeping everything in one place, and kind of like I have different categories for like articles or ideas that could become articles and things like that. Strategy for the business, projects we're working on or whatever. For all project management, we use Asana. And then I would also say, like, although we don't usually think about these as organizational tools, but Twitter and WordPress are the two, which is what I run my site on currently. That's an organization of like everything I've created, basically. Mm-hmm. Like the information architecture of the site, the categories, the way things are laid out. That is how I organize the ideas. And then ultimately that culminated with Atomic Habits, which I would say is like all the best habits material from the site, plus a bunch of additional research that I did and put together in like one very tight, unique, like cohesive thing.
Right.
And yeah, so this is extending again a little bit more away from like running the business to creative organization, mm-hmm. but compression is a really big part of that. The more that you can compress things into like a single container, the more organized it feels. And so Atomic Habits is like the single container for James's thoughts on habits.
Yeah. Oh, I like the way you put that. I always think of it as just sort of like, oh, this is all, I talk about this in lots of different places and lots of different areas, but now this is the manual for it.
Right. If you're going to start in one place, if you can only read one thing, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a single container for all that.
Okay. So we're going back to the creator thing. So, okay. WordPress and Twitter as a part of your sort of like content organization. Can you just walk me through, like, when you're going to write a blog post, where do you go? Do you go to Evernote or do you go to WordPress?
I go to Evernote. And the reason I do, writing, for me, writing is like thinking, in the sense I don't really know what I think about something until I've written about it, when you do a podcast or when, you're just talking to somebody in conversation and they ask you a question for the first time, what I've realized is I'm kind of just talking my feelings, in the sense that I'm like talking how that question lands with me and how I feel about it in the moment right now. And it's really not until later, if I write about it, that the first time maybe I'm writing my feelings, and then I go through it and I revise and tighten and edit and move things around. And then it's only after like 20 or 30 or 50 times doing that I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I actually think. Like that's the real, now I've got to it.
Because you've had time to sit with it. You've had time to like look at all sides of it.
Right. Yeah. You can poke holes in your own argument.
Yeah.
So that part of writing I really like, but it's very effortful and not maybe, I like the results, but maybe like the action is not really that fun. But there is one piece of writing that I find really fun. And that's the connection of ideas that were not previously connected. So Evernote serves this role for me in the sense that, let's say we're talking today and you spark an idea for me throughout the conversation. I get done, I dump that into Evernote. Then later I'm reading some chapter in a book and I have another idea, I dump that in. So I keep doing that every day. And I have all these ideas that are just kind of sitting there waiting to become something. And then maybe it'll be 6 months from now and I'll read an article in the New York Times or somewhere else, and I'll come across a story. And that story will be like, oh, that's the story I should tell to make that point that I had dumped in months ago. And that's the most fun part for me, is the connection between, hey, I found this story that can illustrate this point I've been sitting on. And now the article kind of comes to shape and I can put those two together and the blog post fills out.
Okay. Love this. Super practical question. Are all these ideas literally in a list in a note? Or is it like, break out a note for each one, kind of summarize what it is in the title? Like, how do you put them in a place where you're like, oh my gosh, now I can make the connection because they're close enough to each other?
That's a good question.
This is probably not a super sophisticated answer, but.
No, that's a good question. I think that I could either do a better job of this, or maybe if I used a different tool, like I haven't used Notion yet, so maybe that would nest them better.
Oh, I tried it and I was like, God, I have too many things now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
right.
It seems like the cool thing about this is once you've chosen the tool, you can do things like put all the ideas in one place and who cares if you can get better at it? It's working for you.
Yeah, right.
So instead of constantly trying to optimize, which I've been chronically terrible at oh, this is a new tool, maybe this will be better for me. It's like just use one as much as possible.
Yeah. So the way that I currently do it is I have a notebook in Evernote called Articles. And then in that notebook, every idea gets its own individual note. And then I will leaf through those notes occasionally. Like there's probably, 600 or 800 in there right now or something. And I'll go through them all. And then occasionally I'll start to compress them into related ones. So let's say that I run through it like today and I see that there are 4 notes on sleep habits. Well, maybe I put those all into one note on sleep habits, and that starts to become a bigger article on sleep.
Got it.
And that's actually the step that I should do more of than I don't.
Yeah.
The cataloging is great. It's nice to have an idea and have one place where immediately it goes and it can live there and I don't have to store it in my brain forever.
But also, if something were to come out of this conversation that really was oh, that sleep habit idea, it's now come to life. You go back to Evernote and you just do the consolidating then because you're ready to run.
That's usually how it ends up working. I write about something. I feel like, oh, okay, now I really have to write about it. I got something that could be an article, and then I write that, and then I'm like, what else have I said about this? And then I pull all that other stuff in.
And that's what's so nice about having these searchable tools.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me nerd out on that a little bit.
Of course.
So, hey, I just got to wrap up a little bit. But before we do, where can everybody check you out? I know we can go to jamesclear.com, but can we support you anywhere else? And of course, everybody, if you did not read Atomic Habits, you've got to get this book. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
So if you want to check out the book, you can just go to atomichabits.com. And then the rest of my writing is at jamesclear.com. You can click on articles, and they're kind of organized by categories. You can jump in, see what's interesting to you. And then links to all social media and everything else is on there as well. The one thing that I will mention that we haven't talked about so far is my newsletter. So again, it's just at jamesclear.com. And every Thursday now I have this new recurring series I've been working on recently called 321, where I share 3 short ideas from me, 2 quotes from other people, and they tend to be longer passages. It's not like, be the change you want to see in the world, Gandhi. It's like
such a good
something
one, though.
meatier. Yeah.
Shout out to Gandhi.
And then one question for you to ponder throughout the week. So anyway, you can check out the 321 newsletter.
And I've been loving that segment. That's been a really fun newsletter to get. So you guys make sure we will link to that in the show notes. In a few minutes, I'd like to record the secret show with you if you're up for it.
Yeah, of course.
You guys can find that in Shine Squad at patreon.com/AMYTV. But before we do, I have to ask you my last question. What does it mean to you to go after the life that you want?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it comes back a little bit to what we talked about earlier, this idea of like taking action. To go after the life you want means to not only envision it, but to actually act upon it. And so I think, obviously I'm biased to talking about making things a habit, but even if it's not a habit, it needs to be at some point an individual choice. And so I think I would probably summarize it as saying to go after the life you want means that you have a bias toward action, that you are daily biased or inclined to act upon the ideas that you have and not merely theorize about them.
James Clear, thanks for being on the show.
Great. Thank you.
All right, let's catch the deets from this conversation. Habits produce results. You can't start to see the benefit of a habit until it actually becomes a habit. Is that a detail? I don't know, because it sounds obvious, right? But we can call something a habit and it not actually be habitual. How have you been categorizing things in your life as habits that are not actually, and therefore not seeing results? Do you see a difference? Maybe you have a bad habit and you can notice that it is producing a certain type of result. Start thinking about the things that James suggested today as you are producing the good habits in your life so that you can see those good results that you want, hopefully those great results. But remember that it actually takes doing the work on a regular, consistent basis over a certain period of time that could change for anything to actually become a habit. Next, show up for yourself. It's always tough when you're working toward building a habit, but commit to showing up and putting in your best effort. Keep your sights set on what's really important to you. If you're only thinking about the fact that, I'm going to work out every day, that's just a detail in comparison to the result, the excitement, the end of the tunnel, the light that's coming from what might happen because of that commitment. So being consistent is very important, but the only way to do that and feel very good about it on a regular basis, pushing through the tough times, is remembering why you're doing it. And finally, life comes in seasons. Be mindful of the season you're in. Don't use it as an excuse, but know that things change whether you want them to or not. So whether this is a season of family, your career, or something else, they start to shift, and you can see that in your habits and goals. Remember to know why you're doing everything and how it changes throughout these moments. I would love to hear what tip you enjoyed today. Pop over to our Instagram at Details Podcast so we can hear what you took away and plan to take action on from this conversation. And please, 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 if you do nothing else, grab a copy of Atomic Habits. It is absolutely fantastic. I recommend this read to everyone. So insightful, so actionable. We will link to that on Amazon, as well as if you want to check out the video that we did on AMYTV, we will link to that as well. By the way, hey, if you like getting advice straight to your earbuds, I would love to send you some simple steps for living your best life every day. That is my free audio training, The 7 Essential Details for Going After the Life You Want. To receive this audiogram, all you got to do is subscribe to this podcast and take a screenshot that you have. Send that screenshot to hello@detailspodcast.com with audiogram, please, in the subject line, and we will get that right over to you. Don't forget to check out Shine Squad at patreon.com/AMYTV, especially if you want to hear one of my favorite secret podcasts that we've done so far with James Clear. In addition to this one, which is featured today, so you can listen to it right away when you get over there, I post a new secret podcast every weekday morning, so make sure you don't miss it. That's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it as always. Remember, subscribe for good vibes, kiss the ones you love, and go after the life you want. I'll see you back here on Tuesday. Cheers.